the author of Guided. Last week was the third episode of Lessons from Guided. Today, I will continue to read from the 137 tips, learnings, lessons, and awarenesses sprinkled throughout my true life story, Guided. Guided is the roadmap for stepping on board at any point along your life path. So you too can join forces with your own spirit guides and angels, creating a better life than you could have done on your own. Just when I thought I was done writing Guided, my guides started to wake me up at 1 a.m. every night for 2 weeks, starting from the beginning of my manuscript, stopping me where they added a tip, a learning, a lesson, or an awareness. They told me these would help the reader understand how guidance works in their lives. These are like afterthoughts of reflection of what was really going on in my life as I was living it. Living in two worlds, not just this one. This is what consciousness is all about, being aware of what's really going on from this greater awareness. In my training, I will be showing you, like my guides showed me, how this works. Last week, starting from when I first became aware that I was an oddball in this world, I also discovered my place, along with the subsequent consequences. I never doubted myself and always followed my heart, even though I paid a price. Little did I realize at that time how important all this would be in the years ahead. Living in two worlds simultaneously without anyone in this world noticing it was my secret weapon. And Guided is available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. It's available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook, and I read the book myself. All right. And we are now in chapter 5 of these tips, learnings, lessons, and awarenesses. Consequences of My Choices is the name of this chapter. And I'm going to go to the tip first. To many, the truth appears to be coarse. That's why the phrase politically correct became so popularized. That's how the coddling of society began. It's no longer okay to speak the truth. Look at how that aligns with the world we're living in right now. Okay? Now, I'm going to say I am right in this chapter. I am between the first and second grade when I recognize all this is going on. That's going to put me in the late 1950s. Your guides don't allow any of this. They don't have to. The whole point in having input from your guides is to get to the truth. So if you are offended by the truth, there will be times when you won't like what your guides have to tell you, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to hear it, just like for me. Okay, and I'm going to explain a little bit about how this works. By the end of the first grade, I had adjusted pretty well to school. I had found friends who saw things like I did. I had become used to being kicked out of school, sometimes weekly, when I got into the fights and beat up yet another bully. Most of the teachers didn't like me, and I didn't like them. For my money, they didn't deserve to be liked because of the way that they treated the kids. I thought the kids I hung out with were funny. The African American kids, my friends. They made me laugh all the time, despite continually threatening to beat me up. I felt confident I could handle them, and I proved it. They were consistently testing me because I was white. I always knew that, and I liked them anyway. I understood that there would always be an edge on our relationship because of the racial tension that persisted all around us. After all, it was the 1950s, and things were not at all like they are today. However, that didn't stop us from liking and respecting each other, even if we fought from time to time. There was no pretenses. Our relationships were truthful. This is also what I was used to from my guides. Okay. So it's almost like a brutal honesty. Nobody's BSing each other. Okay. So this is where the guides come from. This is what they want you to do. This is how they want you to explore in this world, not just cowering to what you're being told what to do, how to think, who to love, who not to love. They don't want you to live like that. You didn't come here to be small. Okay. And here's another tip. Your guides like it when you experiment. It seems to open a door for them to chime in when you need them. You need to listen and learn from them because there's much more going on than what you are focused on. They have great input. And here's an example of that just before that tip. At school, the white kids would play boy chase girl games. That's where the boys would chase the girls and try to kiss them. The girls would run into the bathroom so the boys couldn't catch them, but they really wanted them to. In my opinion, this was really stupid. I told these boys who tried to chase me not to do it to me. I would not run away from them. One boy would not stop going after me, so I slugged him, but he persisted. So one day my mom pinned a flower on my dress with a long floral pin. This gets a little radical. When that boy came after me that day on the playground, I pulled the pin out of my shirt and stuck him in the butt with it. He freaked out. I got kicked out of school again, and he moved to a different school. The good news is that the boys never tried that with me again. These boys would pull on my ponytail and I would slug them, but that was different from trying to get me to play their submissive kiss and run games. At some point, though, I did start to wonder what it felt like to be a submissive like the other girls. They were all that way, and I was the only one who was different. I also noticed how these girls would not raise their hand in class when the teacher asked who knew the answer to a problem. They didn't want to appear too smart in front of the boys. I didn't understand that either, because I wouldn't play the phony game because I wouldn't play that phony game was another reason I was not accepted by the girls or the boys in my class. Even the teacher thought I was obnoxious. Remember, this was the 50s. It was a social stigma to be your real self if you were a girl. However, one day at school, I decided to experiment. And this ties into the tip I read just before I started reading this. I decided not to participate in the class when the teacher asked us for the answers. I wanted to see first what it would feel like to act like these submissive girls, and second, how they would respond differently to me. The outcome was ridiculous. I felt like I was in a void where I couldn't breathe. I was totally stifled, and I could also feel resentment. I don't know what the other kids thought of my behaving like the pack. I didn't give it enough time. I didn't give the experiment enough time to really show me that. That day, I learned that being not non-authentic was not for me. I never did it again, but I tried it. I had to try that, and the guides want you to do that. Okay, you may not like what's going on. You may disagree with what somebody thinks or is trying to make you do or whatever is going on. But that doesn't mean it's not good to at least try what they're promoting or what's popular or whatever. Try it before you buy it, right? Try it to see how it feels to you. Does it fit? Does it not fit? And then you're going to know for sure what's right for you. That's true throughout your life, not just as a child. But the framework for this, the path in your life will start from when you're a kid. So it's real important to experiment. I can't say that word enough. The guides really like it when you do that, because that's when they chime in. That's when they can really give you feedback in the way that you're used to getting it. It feels like it came from you because it comes through. When it comes through, it's so natural, but it didn't come from you. It came through you. Okay, so here's the next tip. Learning. Bullies are a big problem. Even to this day, they are everywhere. If you or someone you know is being assaulted or threatened by a bully, take it seriously, because letting bullies get away with it only strengthens them. I know that from my mom. Bullies are also cowards, so they are sneaky. That was my mom. Being exposed and outsmarted are two of their biggest fears. So consult with your guides and figure out how to do that effectively, because they can be stopped. And here is a little example of that, okay? When I was in the 2nd grade, my younger brother started kindergarten. He was a lot smaller than the other boys. I had already taught him to fight, but he was still not a strong or confident fighter. He was mostly sweet and didn't have the heart for fighting. In our neighborhood and at school, there was no way to survive without learning to defend yourself. I looked out for Larry while letting him find his way, although I would step in when he couldn't defend himself. The kids knew he had an older sister who protected him, so they were not as aggressive with him as they otherwise would have been. But there was one girl in my grade, 2 grades ahead of my brother, who started picking on him. She gave him black eyes, bruises, and scrapes all the time. It went on for months. It got so Larry was afraid to go to school. I'm pretty sure it was her way of calling me out for a fight. I told this girl to leave him alone, or she would be dealing with me. She didn't listen and just got more aggressive and mean. One day, she really hurt Larry. So the next day I told him to meet me after school, and we hid behind a bush waiting for her to walk by. When she showed up, I stopped her and asked her why she kept beating up my little brother. She was snotty and she said, "I just feel like doing it." She added that I couldn't stop her. She was a big white girl, bigger than me and a lot bigger than Larry. I provoked her so she would hit me first. This was my MO. So I would be mad enough to beat her up. I couldn't do it unless they hit me first. She hit me and I beat her up. When it was over, I told her that if she ever hurt my little brother again, I would come after her again. This time she understood. I made her apologize to Larry, and he felt a lot better knowing she wouldn't be hurting him anymore. He also kind of liked that she had gotten a taste of her own medicine. So that's what this is about, this thing about bullies. You have to confront them. They have to be confronted some way or another. There's all kinds of ways to outsmart them. The 2 things I said here that came through this learning, the guides showed me, was that bullies being exposed and outsmarted are their 2 biggest fears. Being exposed and outsmarted. Okay. So that's what everyone has fears, you guys. They do. So all you have to do is figure that out with the bully and figure it out for yourself. Put your tactic together. Put your plan together and implement it. Here's a tip. Helping Larry was the project that eased my own suffering. It helped me overcome the threat that was so monumental at that time in my life. When you reach out to help someone else, you do things for them that you never even thought of doing for yourself. In a way, you become their guide. So here's what led up to that. Once Larry started school, I began to take him with me everywhere I went. The archery range, the zoo, the amusement park, bowling, swimming at the YMCA, to the basketball uh, 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 court, yeah, skateboarding and roller skating, and to the movies. He learned a lot and he learned it fast, and he had a lot of fun and felt protected. I always had enough money to pay our way from the money I made as a fly hunter. Dad would pay me a penny per fly. I quickly became Linda, the fly hunter. I would kill more flies in a day than my dad wanted to count, sometimes earning $10 in one day. So I did all kinds of things to speed up the process. Home life when dad wasn't around was sketchy, even though we were older and not stuck in the house as we had been when we were younger. We never knew when mom was going to find fault with us, with one of us, and beat us. Larry was taking on more of her wrath because he was older now. It was just better not to be around. So he and I were gone whenever we could be. And that's what I was talking about. I would take him everywhere. And Larry was beginning to get the hang of navigating through the family stuff. And he was learning how to steer clear of mom. As a result, he stopped feeling so scared all the time. The bully can only exist if you're fearful. They feed on your fear. They thrive on scaring you, in hurting you, all right? Without telling him anything about how I learned any of this, I was teaching him what I learned from my guides. Again, I never told anybody, but in helping him, it was like how my guides helped me, all right? So I actually got to be a guide. This life is not supposed to be hard, you guys. I'm going to repeat that over and over again. You're going to keep hearing me say that. Just because the people around you make it look like that, act like that, doesn't mean it's true. Okay, and here's the next learning. Under such abusive conditions, going into fight or flight mode is a natural response. It becomes survival. Being guided when suffering like this will bring you very close to your guides. So while you are being depleted in one area of your life, you are being blessed in another. You are never alone as you walk through this life. Never. And here's an example of that. There came a time when I started to think about the day I would be able to go out on my own and have this part of my life behind me, my childhood. I was still wetting the bed. I tried everything. I set the alarm to go off every hour to go to the bathroom, and it still happened. My mother used the bedwetting as yet another reason to resent me. She punished me all the time for doing it, but I still couldn't stop. The merry-go-round dream continued exactly the same way as it started. So between that dream and wetting the bed, I really, really dreaded going to sleep at night, but I never had trouble falling asleep. So Randy and mom were consistently calling me names and tormenting me because of my bedwetting. As a ritual, my mom would make me stand on the kitchen table and instruct each family member to take turns at saying hateful things to me. This was designed to make me feel like I had no value and to convince me that no one in this family wanted me around. That was a tough time. That was really hard. In response, I moved into a somber demeanor to deflect their assaults. My mother made them all tell me I was stupid and ugly. My mother started to call me her ugly duckling. That exercise in demeaning me became an undeclared battle of the wills between my mother and me. Around the time my mother instituted that mental abuse, I started sleepwalking. Once it began, I did it all the time. It was first discovered when my parents saw me walking through the living room and right out the front door one night. They told me to get back in the house, but I just kept walking. And that's when they realized I was asleep. I would wake up in the morning and find my things missing. I would look around the house and sometimes find them. When I did find them, they would appear in the most unlikely places. Even in my sleep, I was trying to escape that family environment. So, you can't run from it. I talked about that in earlier learnings, lessons, tips and awarenesses that I understood. I couldn't run from it, but it was so bad that my knee-jerk reaction was just to get out of there, So sometimes you can't help it. You can't help it. But because it's a fight and flight type of response to the situation, to the environment. Okay, so these are these learnings and stuff, but this is really how it lives out, And here's the last tip in this chapter. Having a good relationship with your dad is critical to the relationships you will have with men in your life. This same fact applies to your relationship with your mother. If they are both great parents, you will likely be a balanced person throughout your life. But the opposite is also true. No matter which way it goes, work through it by understanding what's really going on. The life coach training you will receive from your guides will prove to be a huge value with this. And here's what I'm going to read to you about how this works. One day, I asked my dad about religion. I asked him if he believed in God. He said that from his perspective, religion was filled with hypocrites. He suggested that I would find my own way. This came from a man who was groomed to be a priest from the time he was a boy. Both mom and dad were disgusted with the church, and I sensed that my dad had been abused in some way, but he never talked about it. Later in life, I did marry two men who believed in me and were proud of me, but they both lacked confidence. These two marriages ended in divorce because I couldn't compromise. Oh, come to think of it, my dad also lacked confidence, or he might have been successful in steering my mom away from her abuse toward me. See how this plays out? It's amazing. Okay. All right. So that's chapter 5, and we're going to talk about next week. Contemplate how guidance is always working in your life. Join me again next Saturday, January 9th at 1 p.m. Pacific time on my Facebook page, my Facebook timeline, and my YouTube channel. We'll see you then.